Whatever we are doing in life, that's all because of consciousness. You are not it. You are not that negativity. You are not that depression. Nor are you depressed. Bhaja Govindam, prapte sannihite marane nahi nahi rakshati dukkhin karane. When death is close, at the point of death, Sanskrit grammar is not going to save you. Worship Govinda, Krishna. Worship Govinda, O fool, worship Govinda. Devotion.
Namaste everyone. Today is a very special day for me because I have on the show who I consider my guru, Swami Sarvapriyananda ji. This is our second podcast with him, and words cannot describe who he is. And I'm sure that when you listen to this podcast, you'll be able to learn a lot. And overall, he's the most humble person ever. So I would love to welcome you, Swami Sarvapriyananda ji, to the show once again under the tree. Thank you so much for taking out your time to be here.
Thank you for having me here, Amira. Once again.
Swamiji, I just completed my education in consciousness studies and human potential. So basically studied everything from Bhagavad Gita to Hinduism to knowing thyself. Who am I? This really answering this big question. I want to just start off this podcast with talking to you about, for viewers who may not actually know, who am I? Because it's something we consider just to be, I am Amira, or I am a student, or I'm a podcaster, or I'm this. What is this question really comprised of, and why is it actually necessary for us to know thyself? So just the basics, if you can start off with.
Right, and I'm so glad to know that you studied consciousness. That consciousness studies is a thing now, and it's becoming more and more popular. There are some reasons I'd just like to mention before we go deep into it. The reasons why right now at this time, in our time, consciousness studies has become so important.
Mm-hmm.
I was seeing Oxford University Press. If you Google it, you'll find 5 great unsolved questions in philosophy by Oxford University Press. But if you look at the 5 questions, 4 of the questions are related to consciousness.
Right.
One question is, who am I? That's one big question in philosophy. Second question is, do we have free will? Third question is, do we know anything at all? And how do we know anything? Question of skepticism and knowledge. Then the fourth question is death. What happens at death? Not the physical side of it. That, of course, is well known. But the consciousness side of it. What happens to consciousness at death? And the fifth question was about global justice. But 4 questions, you see, directly related to consciousness. Another reason why consciousness studies has suddenly become very important in the last 20-25 years is this new technology. This technology of scanning the brain has improved dramatically in the last 20-25 years. They have got something called fMRI now, functional MRI, which they can trace very minute activity in the brain, different areas of the brain, and then they can correlate with our experiences, conscious experiences. So that has led to sudden boom of interest in consciousness studies. Another reason why this consciousness studies is very important today is because of this new, internet, especially AI. Suddenly, these computers are doing things which we thought were the area, the province of human beings. Decision making, like driving a car.
Yeah.
ChatGPT. ChatGPT, especially right now.
Brilliant.
It's an amazing thing. It's writing poems and short stories. There are now, just before I came, somebody in New York, a visitor was demonstrating to me a new AI which will make films for you. You just have to, Sora, I think it's called. You just give it a text prompt and it'll make a film for you. Everything it'll do for you. Just tell it what to do, it'll do it. There is AI which paints pictures. There is AI which writes stories and composes poems. So creativity in many dimensions. So again, the question arises, what is consciousness then? So this rise of AI also has sparked interest in what consciousness is. And finally, there's a philosophical question, which I'm sure we'll come to, called the hard problem of consciousness, the inability to explain consciousness with just the brain or nervous system. So for all these reasons, and many more reasons I'm sure, There's a sudden burst of interest in consciousness, and now you have subjects, amazing and wonderful subjects like consciousness studies, which you have studied. Coming to your question about this know thyself, there is an ancient interest in consciousness studies, not just this modern consciousness studies. The philosopher Evan Thompson, he's written his book, Waking, Dreaming, Being. He starts his book by saying that consciousness studies is not a new discipline. It started 5,000 years ago in the Indo-Gangetic plains in the texts called the Upanishads. So people were already investigating what consciousness is. In fact, he says that these Upanishads are so important in human thought that we should do well to date our history not with AD and BC, but before Upanishad and after Upanishad.
And can I just ask you, when you're talking about Upanishads, because I would like to also tell the viewers that I am taking classes from you on the Mundakya Upanishad. And I mean, if there's like one sentence, I think, if I'm not wrong, that you have to sum up that specific Upanishad is that if there's a one thing you need to know, that you know everything from, is that, you know, I am that, I am Brahman.
Yeah, right.
So for Upanishads, how many Upanishads are there? And I mean, are the core teachings kind of similar with what you're talking about?
Yes. So the Upanishads are found in the as part of the holy texts of the Hindus called the Vedas. So in the Vedas, the final teachings of the Vedas, the highest or the deepest spiritual teachings of the Vedas, are found in these texts called Upanishads. These are very ancient, and there are a large number of them. There is a well-known list of 108 Upanishads, but there are more than that actually. 10 of them, arguably 11, are more important than the rest, mainly because about 1200, 1300 years ago, Adi Shankaracharya, he selected those 10 or 11 in some accounts to write commentaries. So he developed the whole system of Vedanta or non-dual Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, based on these Upanishads, and especially these 10 Upanishads. There's a nice verse which names these 10 Upanishads. Isha kena katha prashna mundamandukya titirihi aitareyam cha chandogyam brihad aranyakam tatha. So 10 Upanishads are named here. Now, the message of all the Upanishads, to keep it simple, I'll stick to non-dual Vedanta, which is my home tradition. The message of all these Upanishads actually is very easy to state. It is, you are that. That means the ultimate reality of the universe. There is an ultimate reality of the universe. And we, sentient beings, we are that. And what is that ultimate reality of the universe? It is variously expressed as pure existence, Sat, or pure consciousness, Chit, or pure bliss, Ananda. This is the conclusion that the Upanishads arrive at. Satchidananda, existence, consciousness, bliss. It sounds cool. It is cool. It's the ultimate in coolness. But this is the essence of the teaching, that you are that, Tattvamasi, or I am Brahman, the ultimate reality. This is the essence of the Upanishads, but the rest of the text and the commentaries and the sub-commentaries and multiple independent texts based on the Upanishads, which have been written by great masters throughout the millennia of Indian history, of Indian civilization, they have built upon these teachings.
Mm-hmm. And I think let's just dive into now what exactly is the hard problem of consciousness. And I know that's a term that was coined by David Chalmers, and I believe he's a professor at NYU, or?
Yeah, he's an Australian philosopher of mind. In fact, if you look up the 10 greatest living philosophers, you have to say living philosophers, otherwise you'll get Plato and Aristotle and all. But if you say Google 10 greatest living philosophers, I would wager that you will get David Chalmers. So he's one of the greatest philosophers living today. He's Australian. He's a philosopher at the New York University. They have probably the best analytic philosophy department in the world, and especially the area which is of interest to us, the philosophy of mind. That's a part of philosophy of mind. That's where they study mind and consciousness. So he is So he's the one who coined the term the hard problem of consciousness. Now, what is the hard problem of consciousness? To understand it better, we can contrast it with the so-called quote-unquote easy problem, which are not easy, which will require a lot of hard work, but they're easy in a certain sense. What is that? Behind it all is the idea that the brain is producing consciousness. Now, when they study the brain and you find activity in some parts of the brain with your scans, and the person whose brain you're studying, that person says, oh, there's a pain in my right hand now. And you see this part of the brain lights up. Oh, I'm remembering a red rose now. And that part of the brain lights up. So you now say that this part of the brain is connected with the experience of pain in the right hand. That part of the brain, those bunch of neurons are connected with the memory of a red rose. So this is a science of correlations. Brain activity correlated with the reported conscious experience of the subject. And you can sort of map what's going on in the brain.
Get a good idea.
You can get a good idea. I guess I'm not a neuroscientist, and an actual practicing neuroscientist, they told me it's more complicated than that. And it's actually quite messy. It's not as precise as that. But the general principle we understand. So this is one kind of neuroscience. This is one side of the science of consciousness. But the other side, what he calls a hard problem is, why should electrical activity in living tissue in one organ of the body cause you to have conscious experiences? What is the connection between a burst of electricity here and a pain? What is the connection between a burst of electricity somewhere here, tiny burst of electricity in some little neurons, and Einstein coming to the discovery of E is equal to mc square? Where is the connection? We are all seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting. We have a vivid experience of life, like an internal movie. This is the word that David Chalmers uses. We have like an internal movie which is going on, playing in our heads. But if you look in the heads, there is no movie. If you scan the skull of a living person with the most finest of instruments, most sophisticated instruments, you will not see sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. You will not see E is equal to mc square. You will not see art, philosophy, religion, nothing. You will just see tiny electrical activity, neurochemicals floating around. That's all that you will see. Where is the connection?
You can't track someone's memories, or honestly, I think even at this point, there's no technology that can do mind reading, right?
They're trying, but the question is deeper. Why at all physical, biological processes are experienced subjectively as our life? See, it's a very big question, because consciousness is our life. Whatever we are doing in life, that's all because of consciousness. And yet, how is this consciousness related to the brain? How is the brain producing consciousness? There's some relationship, there's no doubt about it. That's the easy problem. But how at all can you... Correlation is not causation.
There's no proof of that.
It's not an explanation. So they calls it an explanatory gap. So he uses the term qualia. Qualia means what does it feel like? Have a cup of coffee, you feel the warmth of it, the flavor of it, the aroma of it. Warmth, flavor, aroma, none of them are in the brain.
You can't really describe that either.
Yeah, and there's tiny bits of electrical activity. How does that become warmth and flavor and aroma in your experience, living experience? There is a big gap here somewhere. And this is called the hard problem of consciousness. And it actually exists. Another philosopher put it nicely, Galen Strawson. He said there is actually no hard problem of consciousness. We are all conscious. There is no doubt about that. We are all conscious right now. We are aware. We are conscious. Now you have made up your mind that somehow brain is producing consciousness. And now you can't explain how brain is producing consciousness. Now you're calling it hard problem. But why are you assuming that brain is producing consciousness at all? It could be that the brain is an instrument. It's like people are coming into the room through the door. Through the door, people are coming into the room. Now, all of us, we have entered this room through that door. Now, if somebody says, oh, the door is so powerful, it produced so many people. It didn't produce people. We came in through the door.
The door was just an instrument.
An instrument. It could be that the brain is an instrument that consciousness uses for functionality. Clearly, the brain is related to consciousness. Now, this is a question. This is called the hard problem of consciousness.
I think I just want to share a little personal experience, and maybe you can kind of describe that in the context of consciousness. So, for example, just a few days ago, I was having an argument with my mom, and during that conflict, I was basically able to because I have this knowledge now. So I was able to witness. Essentially, it's like there was a thought in my mind that, okay, this is happening. I'm able to observe the entire situation, observe that this is happening, and I'm reacting.
Yes. So you're able to observe the person Amira.
Yes, that's what strange thing was. It was like almost if it was another identity, and I was able to observe it, and I could stop it afterwards. So that was...
And that one, which is observing the person Amira arguing with her mom, that one cannot exactly be the same as the person Amira. It's almost like the person Amira is a mask which you are wearing. In fact, the very word person means mask. I was amazed to discover that in ancient Greece, they used to have these plays. They would stage these plays. And each actor would come on stage in that amphitheater, and they would hold these huge masks which represented a character, and they would speak through the mask. Sona means sound. Persona is that mask through which you speak. So person really means a mask. You are not the person. The person depends on you for its existence. You are manifesting the person, but you are not literally the person. Just as you put a mask on my face, I am not the mask. Mask is not my real face, but I operate through the mask. You operate through the person Amira. Yeah, that's a very good point that you've just raised.
Kind of proof that like the real I is pure. It's pure, but the reactions are just either conditionings or some type of like behavior from environment or what people learned from last life that's coming through the real I.
Yeah.
Is that kind of a way to explain?
Yeah, pure in the sense, not in the sense of whether it's good or bad, pure or impure, not in that sense. Like the body may be pure or impure, the mind may be pure or impure. But consciousness, the real I, is pure in the sense that it's only consciousness. It's not mixed with anything else. So it's just awareness. You can say it just isness. Or it just shines, it's awareness. And this sounds abstract, it sounds mystical, but it isn't. Vedanta will say that it's just a fact. It's in fact the most obvious fact of our lives. Just as we are all sitting here, but all of this is illumined by one light. Person might say, oh, there are chairs, there's Amira, there's the chair, there's the microphones, there's Swami. But the fact is, all of this is just, light is reflecting of all of this and coming to our eyes, and that's why we are able to see. Similarly, we are this one light in which appears the personality with thoughts and emotions and the body and the world and its interactions. Yeah. So it's pure in that sense as just isness or just awareness.
Just on that context, in the context of Advaita Vedanta also, I want to play like a little, it's like rapid fire where I'm going to give you a situation, a real life situation where someone's in, and you tell me like if someone knows their true identity or who am I, how do they react to that in the best way so they don't suffer. So, for example, I'm a student who's preparing for, let's say if you're in India, it's like the IAS exams, or in the US, Harvard, Ivy Leagues. And I've spent years and years preparing and putting my heart and soul. But maybe due to some luck, destiny, karma, whatever you call it, I don't get success. That causes failure, that causes depression, suicidal thoughts. That's the innate reaction I'm feeling. How do I use this knowledge to then solve my issue?
You immediately see that there is this negative reaction, unhappiness, a shock, misery. It appears like a wave. It's not that I am shocked or I am in deep misery or I am a failure, I am a loser, I am in deep depression. No, I feel that wave of negativity arising. I am that limitless awareness, like the blue sunlit sky in which a cloud has suddenly appeared. And it's not just being poetic or being rhetorical. You actually see it like that. So this wave of a negative reaction arises. The moment you see it as an object, an interesting thing happens. First of all, you see you are not it. You are not that negativity. You are not that depression. nor are you depressed. If there is rainfall, everything will get wet, but space itself doesn't get wet.
It's also temporary.
It's temporary, and it doesn't affect the space itself. It can affect the air, it can affect the house or the trees, but space itself is not affected by heat, moisture, nothing. It just gives space for everything. Similarly, you are like that space, completely unaffected. Then when this arises in the mind, this cloud, the second thing that will happen is, when you see yourself as a difference with that begins to subside much faster. You see, our negativities affect us much more when we are involved with it.
When you're attached to it.
We hug it to ourselves. It's strange. We hug our unhappiness to ourselves also by identifying, I am unhappy. This is a fact of my life. No, it isn't. Just a moment ago, you were not unhappy. The same consciousness which saw the relaxed and pleasant state of mind is now witnessing the absolute turmoil and distress of the mind. Then the turmoil and distress also go down. This is the next thing that will happen.